What's going on, everybody? Anthony Servino here with the Face Off Sports Network with my top starts and sits at the wide receiver position for NFL Week 14. We're going to lead off with George Pickens. George Pickens gets the Cleveland Browns this week. But let's talk about what George Pickens has been doing. He's gone for over double-digit PPR points in every game but one since Week 7. In 3 out of his past 4, he's been over 16.4 PPR points. The one dud game was against the Cleveland Browns back in Week 12, 4 for 48 on 7 targets. But if you remember that game, he lost a touchdown in the end zone. There was miscommunication between Russell Wilson and George Pickens. He could have had a monster game. It was a blizzard. I don't fault George Pickens, who is still getting his deep ball opportunities week in and week out. He's also had at least one red zone opportunity in every game since Week 6. When it comes to George Pickens, he's getting 27.4% of the team targets. That's 95th percentile using the tools on rotowire.com. He's also being targeted on nearly 25% of the routes he is running with a 13 ADOT, which is 81st percentile. When it comes to the percentage of team air yards, that's 44.1. That's 99th percentile. He is the guy. He is the big play guy in this Steelers passing attack. And last week, we know Russell Wilson had a career game, and George Pickens was involved, 3 for 74 and a touchdown on 6 targets. A lot of people got involved in that game, but that's what we know we're going to get out of George Pickens. He's a big play waiting to happen, and I think the big play comes this week against Cleveland. A couple of weeks ago in that blizzard, Cleveland won. They were at home. Pittsburgh kind of struggled to move the football. Again, it was the snow. We can't fault them that much. But Pittsburgh needs this game. They need to win to pull away in the division. They need to get closer to the Kansas City Chiefs and the Buffalo Bills. This is a must-have game at home. And we just saw the Cleveland Browns, by the way, on national TV, give up an 80, 90-yard touchdown to Mims. This team leaks big plays at wide receiver position. And again, we know that's what George Pickens does best. He's a big play artist, and it's going to happen this week. He's a must-start during Bimageddon. Next up, Calvin Ridley. Calvin Ridley revenge game, folks. The first time he's lining up against Jacksonville this season. Jacksonville, by the way, the third easiest matchup for enemy wide receivers. Will Levis is playing really well for Will Levis. He's had a nice little run here. He's throwing the football deep. He's a gunslinger, and he's making it happen. We're seeing Westbrook-Ikhine pop week in and week out for scores. But it doesn't mean Calvin Ridley has been quiet. Since week 8, he's gone for double-digit PPR points in all but 2 games. 2 games over 24 points in that period. But in 2 out of his past 3, he's gone under 9.8 with a 14.3 matchup against Houston in Week 12 sandwiched in between. The targets are there. I'd like to see more, but he's at under 7 targets in each of his past 3 games. But since Week 6 to Week 12, he's had at least 8 targets. So we know that the volume can be had for Calvin Ridley. This is the game where I think he could potentially put up another 20 PPR points. It's the revenge game narrative on top of that. It's one of the easiest matchups on paper. I think this is a game where we see both Westbrook-Ikhine and Calvin Ridley find the end zone. I think Calvin Ridley can potentially have one of his best games of the year. I don't see a world where Jacksonville can slow this guy down, especially if he's getting the volume. And that he is. 25.1% of the team targets. He's averaging 107.8 air yards per game, which is 99th percentile. If we like big play receivers like George Pickens, we should also like Calvin Ridley, even though it's a slight quarterback downgrade when it comes to deep ball accuracy. I think the matchup is there against Jacksonville for Calvin Ridley to show out. Next must-start wide receivers, JSN. JSN a few weeks ago, as we know, had a really nice game against the Arizona Cardinals. 19.7 PPR points, hauls in 6 of 7 targets for 77 and a touchdown. But we know JSN has been on a little bit of a run, going for at least 19 in 3 out of his past 4 games, 2 of which, remember that 37-point outing, a 21-point outing. Last week, a little bit of a lull. He got the Jets. He did nearly get 12 PPR points. He was only targeted 4 times, caught all 4 for 74 yards. He also ran once for 5 yards, but that was the Jets. On paper, the Jets are the hardest matchup for enemy wideouts, and JSN still managed to have a high floor game. I think he's going to pop this week against Arizona. Arizona's offense, contrary to a few weeks ago in Seattle, should be able to get going at home. Normally, these games between Seattle and Arizona, in Arizona, 3 out of their past 4 are extremely high scoring and went over, I believe, 50 points total. If Arizona's scoring, we know that Seattle's going to have to catch up. And right now, do we trust DK Metcalf? DK Metcalf's questionable with the shoulder. He's expected to be in the lineup this week, but they're saying per reports that he's still bothered by it. DK Metcalf has been in a lull. He's under 14 PPR points in 3 straight, and he's under 14 PPR points in all but 1 game since week 5. He hasn't found the end zone since week 7. Right now, it looks like JSN is a wide receiver you want in this Seattle passing attack. And again, this could be a favorable game script. This could be a shootout. This could be a situation where Seattle's possibly trailing, despite the fact that they're playing good football on both sides of the ball right now. I really like this spot for JSN against an Arizona Cardinals defense that gives up a ton of points to enemy slot wide receivers. Remember, if you like content like this, hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, and the alert icon, so you can be notified anytime we go live to answer your questions, which is like every day, or when we drop videos just like this. If you have trade questions, start sit questions, waiver wire questions, ask them in the comment section below. We'll get back to you as soon as we can. Now let's go to the players we are sitting this week, starting with Davante Adams. Davante Adams got going last week coming out of the bye. 17.6 PPR points, gets into the end zone, hauls in only 5 for 12 targets for 66 yards. We know since he's been with the Jets, he's kind of been underwhelming. He had that 1 big game against Houston, and then he's been under 13 PPR points in the other 2 games outside of last week. He's getting the targets. 3 out of his past 4 games, at least 11 opportunities. He's just not doing enough with them. This isn't the same Aaron Rodgers. It's not the same Davante Adams. Will he still bring a high floor? Maybe. But this week, he gets Miami. The Miami Dolphins right now are the 2nd most difficult matchups for enemy wide receivers. And I get it. We saw Jayden Reed put up 19.7 PPR points last week. But if you actually break down a stat line, he caught 3 of 6 targets for 24 yards and 2 touchdowns. You take away those scores, they shut him down. They shut down Watson for 2 for 67. They shut down Wicks 4 for 30. They have shut down wide receivers all season long, but in the past 3 games especially, Jacoby Myers led his team with 8.8 PPR points against Vegas. Pop Douglas, 11.3. Again, Reed had not the 19, but outside of those 2 touchdowns, he would have been a bust last week. I don't have high expectations for Davante Adams this week. I think the secondary is going to give him fits. And in fact, I think they're going to try to focus on taking Davante Adams out, which means it could be a Breece game if he's active. It could be a Garrett Wilson game. But Davante, the vibes that I'm getting is that he could be a big-time disappointment. I get his by Mageddon. You might have to use him, but temper expectations. Next up, Jaylen Waddle in this same matchup. Waddle got going last week in a solid manner. High floor, 9.3 PPR points, caught all 4 targets for 53 yards. 2 weeks ago against New England is that game where he really got going. He pops for almost 30 PPR points, 8 for $144 and 1 on 9 targets. Those 9 targets season high every other game this year. Outside of week 5 against New England, he had under 6 targets. And last week, again, got back to reality, got back to his usual 4 to 6 target range. And now he gets the Jets. I just talked about the Jets defense and how good they were at shutting down Seattle. Well, now they have to contend with Miami. They get Miami's at home, but they're a much better team at home, as is Tua. But this could be a Devin Achane game. Why? Well, the Jets are softer against the run. We also know that this offense in Miami has run through Devin Achane all season long, and even with Tua back, we're getting Jonnu Smith back in the mix. So if you're going to ask me, well, what wide receiver? I like Tyreek Hill. Tyreek Hill's starting to get going. Jaylen Waddle is the liability to Devin Achane's targets and Jonnu Smith's targets. I am sitting Jaylen Waddle with confidence this week. The final sit, Amari Cooper. I don't trust Amari Cooper. And the reason why, he had that one good game after that trade. Since that trade and since that game, Amari Cooper has not even been a blip on a radar. He's been under 7.5 PPR points in every game he's been active. Remember, he missed some time with an injury. But even with Amari Cooper on the field, he's yet to play more than 35 offensive snaps. He's still a little bit banged up. And quite frankly, do the Bills really need Amari Cooper to win some of the games they've been winning? Yeah, probably not. And do I think that Amari Cooper is going to have to be extremely involved in this game plan to limit the Rams and beat the Rams? Yeah, probably not. Keon Coleman, there's a chance he comes back. Khalil Shakir's been involved. We know the tight end position. If Kincaid comes back, he can start soaking up targets. This offense is really running through Josh Allen as a thrower, but really as a runner. And also James Cook and Ray Davis are playing outstanding football. The Bills don't want to have to throw the football. They want to lean on the run, and they want to pick your defense apart with the big play when it opens up. Until I see Amari Cooper healthy, playing more than 35 offensive snaps and getting more than 3 targets, something he has yet to do since that trade in week 7, I am out on Amari Cooper again. That week 7 game against Tennessee, 4 for 66 and 1 on 5 targets. Since then, he's had a total of 5 targets, under 3, and the other 3 games he's been active, under 55 yards without a touchdown in those other 3 games he's been active. I am sitting Amari Cooper until I see his usage trend upwards.